These 5 NHL trades might just decide who wins the Stanley Cup, and it's not looking good for some teams. One GM's mistake could ruin a season, and these trades will haunt franchises for years. Can they recover, or is the damage done? Today, we're counting down the 5 worst trades of the season, deals that left fans screaming and experts scratching their heads. Number 5. Edmonton Oilers acquire Jake Walman. The Edmonton Oilers desperately needed defensive help. Their blue line had been leaking chances all season, with Evan Bouchard often the culprit. So what did GM Stan Bowman do? He traded for another offensive defenseman. The Oilers gave up a 2026 first-round pick and prospect Carl Berglund to get Jake Walman from San Jose. The problem? Walman is basically a carbon copy of what they already have. Another puck-moving defenseman who doesn't address their actual needs in defensive zone coverage and penalty killing. With Connor McDavid in his prime and last year's Game 7 Stanley Cup final loss still stinging, the Oilers needed a shutdown defender. They also ignored their shaky goaltending, where Stuart Skinner has been inconsistent and Calvin Pickard isn't a championship-caliber backup. When you have the best player in the world, trading a first-round pick for a player who doesn't fix your biggest problems is simply bad management. Number 4. Detroit Red Wings. Do nothing. Sometimes the worst trade is no trade at all. Steve Yzerman, despite having over $10.2 million in cap space and fighting for Detroit's first playoff spot since 2016, made just one minor move. Trading Joseph Foligno to Chicago for aging goalie Peter Mrazek and 37-year-old forward Craig Smith. Mrazek has posted a save percentage below .894 in 3 of the past 4 seasons, and Smith is a fourth-line player at best. No draft picks, no prospects, just 2 veterans past their prime who don't move the needle. Meanwhile, their division rivals loaded up. Toronto added Brandon Carlo and Scott Lawton. Florida landed Brad Marchand. Ottawa acquired Dylan Cozens. By standing still, Yzerman essentially told his players, "We don't believe in you enough to invest in this season." After 7 years without playoffs and with aging stars like Dylan Larkin and Patrick Kane, this passive approach could damage both their playoff hopes and the team's confidence in management. Number 3. Nashville Predators asset mismanagement. Barry Trotz's first season as Nashville's GM revealed his inexperience at the trade deadline. The Predators' biggest blunder came when they traded defenseman Luke Schenn and forward Tommy Novak to Pittsburgh for Michael Bunting and a 4th-round pick. The problem? Hours later, Pittsburgh flipped Schenn to Winnipeg for a 2nd-round pick. This raises an obvious question. If Schenn was worth a 2nd-rounder to Winnipeg, why didn't Nashville make that deal directly? Instead, they essentially gifted Pittsburgh a free upgrade from a 4th to a 2nd-round pick just for being a middleman. Nashville also traded Gustav Nyquist to Minnesota for a 2nd-round pick. While that return isn't terrible in isolation, these moves together show a GM who failed to maximize value at a critical time. For a team that spent big in free agency only to underperform, these deadline missteps further damage their competitive timeline. Number 2. Carolina Hurricanes' Mikko Rantanen disaster. The Carolina Hurricanes created a masterclass in how not to handle a trade situation. 6 weeks before the deadline, they acquired Mikko Rantanen from Colorado, sending Martin Necas, Jack Drury, and multiple draft picks to the Avalanche. Necas wasn't just any player. He was a 26-year-old star center in his prime. After failing to sign Rantanen to a contract extension, Carolina then traded him to Dallas for Logan Stankoven and draft picks. The end result? They essentially swapped Necas, Drury, and picks for Stankoven, an unproven prospect, and different picks. Meanwhile, Dallas immediately signed Rantanen to an 8-year deal with a cap hit lower than Nathan MacKinnon's. Carolina completely misread both Rantanen's intentions and the market. For a team considered Stanley Cup contenders in a weak Metropolitan Division, This sequence significantly weakened their roster and championship chances. They took a proven commodity in Nekas and turned it into uncertainty. Number 1. Boston Bruins' franchise-altering fire sale. Nothing touches the self-destruction we witnessed from the Boston Bruins. In just 24 hours, they traded away Captain Brad Marchand to Florida, Brandon Carlo to Toronto, and Charlie Coyle and Justin Brazeau in separate deals. This wasn't a strategic rebuild. It was pure panic. For Marchand, a franchise cornerstone and still productive 60-point player, they received only a conditional 2027 second-round pick while retaining 50% of his salary. This is a player who embodied Bruins hockey for 15 years and led them to the 2011 Stanley Cup. For Carlo, a top-4 defenseman with term remaining, they got prospect Fraser Minton and a conditional first-round pick while retaining 15% of salary. Carlo immediately strengthened division rival Toronto, a team Boston will face for years. The timing made these trades even worse. The Bruins weren't out of playoff contention. They held a wild card spot. Their front office accepted returns that would be disappointing even in normal conditions, let alone in a seller's market. If Boston wanted to retool, they could have waited until the offseason when more teams could bid for their players. The rushed nature suggests either internal dysfunction or complete market misunderstanding. Either way, it's a catastrophic failure that will impact the franchise for years. These 5 disasters share common themes: misjudging player value, failing to maximize returns, and making moves that don't align with team timelines. The consequences will reshape this year's Stanley Cup picture and team trajectories for years. Dallas now looks like Cup favorites after adding Rantanen to an already strong roster. Florida bolstered their title defense by adding Marchand's grit and skill. Toronto addressed their biggest weakness by acquiring Carlo. Meanwhile, Boston and Carolina took major steps backward. Detroit missed their opportunity, and Edmonton continued to waste McDavid's prime with misdirected moves. As the playoffs approach, these decisions face their ultimate test. For some GMs, these trades could cost them their jobs. For others, the consequences will be worse. Watching former stars lift the cup in different uniforms while their teams watch from home. In a salary cap league where championship windows close quickly, these 5 disastrous trades remind us that sometimes the most important moves are the ones you don't make, or the ones you make properly after careful consideration of the market.